What is happening, good people? We are here for Macro Dirt Podcast number 28. It's me and my man Jared Chewbacca Head Dillian. What's up, bro?
What's up, Big Johnson?
How you doing today? All right.
Chewbacca head.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. I'm getting Chewbacca vibes from your haircut.
I'm growing it out down to my shoulders.
I
It's
know.
going to take another 6 to 8 months, but
Michael
it's going to get
Michael
down
Hutchins
there.
Michael Hutchins model or longer?
Probably Michael Hutchins length. Yeah,
Nice. Nice. I
yeah,
like it. All right, so we had a fucking Nvidia event to discuss yesterday, man. You want to talk about that a little bit to start off? I do.
yeah, yeah. Sounds like you do. Yeah,
Yeah, man. I mean, that's a typical Icarus print, right? In like the truest sense of the word for tactical traders, right? We had a news announcement that causes Nvidia to open up at a new all-time high. We have the outside reversal that takes out the previous day's low, closes on the low. It's a large magnitude 2 sigma slide, lands right in technical support for the time being. And for me, that's the end of the Nvidia rally for the next several weeks, maybe months to consider. And what I worry about is if semiconductors become a source of funds for some of the other stuff that's going on in the market now. There's a lot of Trump trades kind of materializing. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think of the Nvidia move versus the market and the Nasdaq and things like that, JD?
um, it's funny. You talked about the Icarus print, and I love that phrase, the Icarus print. Like I
Yeah.
use that all the time. I
Mhm.
mean, you see that a lot in a stock where it just boink, you get a candle, like it breaks out, and then it just shits the bed, and like that, it puts in the highs.
Yeah.
JC Peretz put out a chart of Nvidia, uh, showing a big rounded base and another rounded base. He kind of is implying that it's going higher. I'm just looking at Apple. Dude, Apple is a freaking dumpster fire. It's down again today. It's trading about 240. Like, it's funny you mentioned Nvidia making the Icarus print with the biggest stock in the index, like, can't catch a bid at all, you know.
Mm.
Um, so
That's another interesting one. That's into support as well. Just like the NASDAQ is into support. We're finally actually grazing the 50-day moving average in the NASDAQ, which like weirds you out. If you've been watching this bull market, we haven't been able to pull back that steeply yet. The
but you,
S and
you remember a couple weeks ago when we were talking with your buddy, what's his name again?
JJ.
JJ, yeah. And I said, we need to see the market start closing on the lows, right? Like it had been months since we had an intraday move where it closed on the lows. We're closing on the lows every single day now.
Yeah,
Like every single day, we're closing on the lows,
that
you
is a
know?
sea change that is worth noting for
Yeah.
sure, man. Because if you're playing this stuff for the short side for the last several weeks, months, which is something that are scenarios that I've been in the markets and Nvidia, things like that, you notice that everything levitates off the lows into the bell, right? More money coming into the markets, just allocation after allocation, market on close stuff. And then when that stuff disappears, the stuff closes on the lows again, and that's when you have the cascades happen. So that's why you definitely have to be sitting up in your chair when the most popular stock in the most popular sector of the most popular index has a move like this. So
Yeah.
that's what we're trying to get across here, if anything. Let's go briefly to a little macro because there's some gyration in the dollar on the Trudeau resignation. Give me your read on that, JD.
Well, what's funny was I was sitting on the couch Sunday night when the Bloomberg headline came across that Trudeau was resigning, and I immediately went to dollar CAD. Didn't move.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Right.
Like, so then after a couple of minutes, it started to move, and it moved like 2 or 3 tenths of a percent. But I'm like, oh my God. I mean, like Canadian dollar should be up like 2 or 3% on this. Like, this is insane. So a couple things on this. First of all, I very much believe in this trade. I believe you should be long Canada, the currency, the stocks. I believe you should be long the whole thing because Pierre is going to take over and he is better than Trump. He's Trump times 10. He's the best thing for that Canada could possibly get. If you look at the next 4 to 8 years of Canada under Pierre, it is going to boom. It is going to boom. And the funny thing is, when I talk to Canadians, they are deep in pessimism. They're so pessimistic. They're in a depression up there, and they cannot see how it's going to get any better. And I'm like, look, like from an American from the outside looking in, like this is a big deal. Like, so Chrystia Freeland is going to run. Mark Carney, who used to be, head of the Bank of Canada, then head of the Bank of England, like he's thinking about running. They're not going to win. They're not going to vote for more liberal leadership. It's going to be Pierre. And like the good thing about the market not moving is that it gives you time to build a position. It's not like everything gapped and you missed it and you're like, oh, I'm screwed, like whatever. Like it gives you time to build a position. So
there you can make some points in the slow and orderly move category there. That's for sure. I think it would be interesting if Polivar becomes a governor in the state of Canada, right? According to Trump's new plan, where we're taking over. What are we taking over? Canada, Greenland, the Panama
Panama.
Canal. Yeah, it's all amazing. But yeah, it's interesting to see that reaction is everything, right? Where we didn't pop to a new high in the Canadian currency. We're hoping that maybe something happens like happened in Argentina when Milei took over, and in El Salvador when Nayib took over. And, this kind of leadership change is really a major sea change. It doesn't shock me that Canadians are as negative as they are. I mean, they've been going toe to toe with an extremely powerful and smug globalist. For how long has this guy been in
9 years.
Oh my
9
God,
years.
pounding away at the country, right? Pendulum reached the apex when he reached into everyone's bank account to stop this trucker strike, right?
Incomes in Canada have been flat for the last 9 years.
Right, while housing prices have spiraled into the stratosphere, right?
Yeah, they have West Virginia incomes and San Francisco real estate.
Oh my God, that explains the pessimism. I mean, Jesus
Yeah.
Christ, how do you survive in that kind of an environment? I don't have any idea, quite honestly. Well, that's a good read on it. So my quick read on the dollar index was that, it stopped, the rally dead in its tracks on a little bit of Canadian strength. But now we're right back towards the highs at 109 bid again in the dollar index. Are you still bearish the dollar? Are you hanging in there with this call?
Barely hanging in there.
Yeah.
Hanging in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to stick around to January 20th. I at least want to see this trade through to the inauguration, right? Because as I've said all along, the Trump administration, Bessent, they cannot tolerate the dollar at these levels. If they are going to do the tariffs they say they are going to do, they are going to have to counteract it by weakening the dollar. And that's what I'm waiting for. And Bessent he's been quiet. He did this whole podcast circuit before he got nominated, but since he's been nominated, he's been quiet. He doesn't want to screw up the confirmation process.
Yeah.
Trump made some comments on interest rates, but he didn't make any comments on the dollar, right? So we'll see.
Yeah. No, that's a good point too. That kind of addresses, people in Twitter and the Substack have been responding to the podcast with like, is that your thesis still? Are we still going to see an intervention? And it's like, yeah, we're going to let this play out. That's still a total possibility. So it was a good answer for that question. The bond market is interesting to me, right? We got to talk about it. Since we have started the Fed's easing cycle, interest rates are up 100 basis points in the 10-year note, right to the high of last year at 4.7%. So tell me where the disconnect is there, JD, in the Treasury market and Fed funds.
Well, the funny thing is that, so I want to talk about bonds. I want to talk about 30s. So 30s got to like 3.94. And this is many months ago in the Macro Dirt podcast, but that's when I got super bearish on bonds and yields just melted up. And then they melted up into the election. And then when Trump nominated Bessent as Treasury Secretary, you actually had a retracement. Like yields came down a little bit. Like the thesis was Bessent can fix the problem. You have Doge, you're going to be cutting spending, you're going to have less issuance. And since then, yields have just gone totally out of control. The curve is steepening like a house on fire. Right? We're at 43 basis points now, positive 43. It steepens every single day. What does that mean? If you've had a long period of inversion and you start steepening, that's usually when you get a recession. Christopher Waller has said that he wants more rate cuts in 2025. What is he seeing that I'm not seeing? We just printed 201 on claims this morning. We printed 201 on claims. ADP was a little lower. We got payrolls on Friday. Like I I don't know.
Tour de force commentary on the bond market right there, man. That covers it all. I've been sitting here writing about the steepening of the curve since it broke into positive territory, saying that this is a sea change that the VIX is eventually going to respond to. And then we saw it steepen, again, this last leg while this Nvidia outside day happens. And I'm looking at the stock market saying, how the fuck is the S&P still 5950 bid? I would have thought that this thing would have gotten cracked already. It's having trouble rallying. So maybe we're a little bit ahead of the curve as usual, where, like you said, we see some economic weakness creep into the data. And what would also go hand in hand with the sell-off now is that the market is really, really sensitive to the economic data, right? It's causing fits and starts, strong data, everything one direction, weak data, everything the other direction. And that's why you've got the VIX at 18, kind of 18, 20 now instead of 13 bit of 15. So
The other thing I want to say is I haven't looked at the open interest, but I think there's a lot of short gamma around the 5850, 5900 level in the S&P. The market kind of acts like it. And that's why we have support there. And if we rip through 5850 to the downside, that short gamma is going to kick in and it's going to collapse. So
could be.
Yeah.
Could be good overlay in the options there. What my question is now, where are we with the dollar back at the highs, with maybe a potential sign of weakness in technology in the stock market? Does that change your view on commodities, that we should still be sort of gathering commodities at these levels, looking for appreciations from here?
I want to say yes because copper is acting so well. Copper I believe is bottomed. It's the price action in copper is a lot better. Gold has been very bouncy lately. Gold has been very bouncy. It's actually, if you look at a DeMark chart of gold during that correction, we've actually put in a 13 buy on gold and we're forming a wedge, right? So if we break out of this wedge, it's going to run like an antelope, So,
Yep. Typical bull market resumption of trend stuff, right? We make the hysterical high, we back into the moving averages, consolidate, break the steepest downtrend, and go, right? So that would be the least shocking thing that happened in the gold market, that nothing about the trend has been dented, bruised, or damaged. And it feels like it's just going to continue, especially with its ability to hang in there with the dollar on its highs. There's still a dollar pullback trade coming from some level, and I'm dying to see how commodities behave during that.
Yeah.
That'll be sort of grease the skids for the commodity market to break out, and if we're going to get it, that'll be the time that it has to happen. If we don't get it when the dollar pulls back, then we know we're screwed on the bullish commodities call, right? Looking around them, I have one other question, something jumping out at me. eBay is quietly gapping higher to a new high today. I didn't even know people still used eBay, JD. That stock just went from $40 last year to almost $75 at last sale. Tell me what's going on. Are you going to put some John Varvatos outfits in front of me now? Is that what's going on? You've got what?
Shoes.
Man, it's a struggle for you to get that foot up there, isn't it? I can hear you wincing like, holy smokes. Put the refrigerator down, JD. You all right?
I've actually been buying a lot of stuff on eBay lately. I've been buying John Barbados stuff. These shoes, which are like $600 shoes, I got them for $60.
Yeah. Well, I guess that explains it right there. I mean, you probably moved the stock a little bit with your small volume purchases, but like I said, I didn't even know that was a really, really popular venue. But the uptrend has clearly resumed. Things trading $74 after earnings. Really, really interesting. There's one thing I wanted to mention. There's one thing that we glazed over, and I have to go back before we go off the markets. WTI, right? I want to talk about this because the thing is dosing on the screens now. The problem that we have in WTI, this entire rally up towards 75 has been on the front month spread steepening, right? Feb March went from 20 cents backwardated to about 80 cents backwardated. Everybody got excited and
That's
got long.
bullish. That's
Well, me
bullish.
aspetta, hold on, as we say in Italian. That is, in and of itself, something to consider as potentially bullish, right? The problem is product spreads. Same month spreads in the product. So Feb, March, falling off a cliff, trading new lows in heating oil, in gasoline, right? That's a problem. There's enough refined product in the harbor to cover us till I don't know how long, and the prices are reflecting that, right?
Hmm.
So, yeah, we've got a sort of one trick pony with WTI crude oil getting out ahead of itself. And my point was, as I wrote about it this morning, is that I don't know if this is going to be sustainable in WTI anymore. And here we are trading from the highs at 75 and a half this morning down to 73.75 as we speak. So that was my little sidebar on crude oil because
You educated me.
yeah, it's something to keep an eye on there. Is there anything in the markets, JD, that we have not brilliantly covered?
I don't think so.
Yeah, me neither. I think we go off markets right now, and I'm excited to go off markets on January 8th. Two of the biggest scions in rock and roll history, both born on January 8th, Elvis Presley and David Bowie, two of my favorite artists. I could go on forever about either of them. What do you think about when you say Elvis Presley, JD?
You know, um, it's uh, I'm too young. That's the problem.
Mm,
My grandma was a big Elvis Presley fan. She loved Elvis, right? And I think it's there was an Elvis movie last year, the year before. I forget what it was called. Tom Hanks was in it. I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, I don't think you can really appreciate Elvis until you have seen Elvis live.
mm,
You know,
mm.
like it's tough to get how charismatic and how magnetic he was just by watching old movies, just by watching old like video clips,
Yeah, yeah.
like the guy was unbelievable.
Unbelievable, right? Unbelievable, unbelievably gorgeous to start out with. Genetic masterpiece, right? He had women from the moment they laid eyes on him, and then he started moving, right? There was no other thing. Like he brought sex into rock and roll, and just to go back to the movie, Baz Luhrmann's 2022 Elvis was an unbelievable movie. If you're an Elvis fan and know just a little bit about it, like first of all, that movie was like cinematography brilliant. Like the whole thing was really, really well done. But you're right about living Elvis because I think my passion for him stems from my group of older cousins who are responsible for introducing me to rock and roll. They were in their teens when I was like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And I remember when Elvis died and my cousin Joe walked into the room and delivered the news to the family at breakfast and had tickets to see Elvis in his hand. He was a huge
Oh,
fan. Yeah, going to see Elvis at Madison Square Garden at some date 2 or 3 months in the future. And he like threw the tickets down on the table and was like crying. And he was like, Elvis died, man. And everybody was like, what? You know what I mean? It was like a moon landing kind of moment. So, when he touches people in your life like that, and I remember what he was like and what people's excitement was like around him. I think that's the whole legend of it right there. So, and then we got David Bowie, born on the same day. It blows me away that two of the biggest shapeshifters in rock and roll were born on the same day. What's your Bowie vibe like today?
um, I don't know. I was never really a big Bowie guy growing up.
That's fair too.
I don't dislike him. I just, I was more into, like, keep in mind in 1987 I was 13 years old.
Mm,
Okay.
mm.
I was listening to Depeche Mode and Erasure and New Order and all that new wave stuff. I never Bowie was a few years before that. Like I would have been like 9 or 10. Like it's little too young for me.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I remember him as a young kid as the sort of, freaky backdrop to like Led Zeppelin and The Who and things like that. And I guess the thing that I have to give him credit for was that when my cousins again sat me down and played Moon Age Daydream, like I have never felt more drawn into a song in my life. You know, I mean, and the guy comes out with the opening lines, I'm an alligator, I'm a mama papa coming for you. I'm a space invader. I'll be a rock and roll bitch for you. You know, and when you hear that and you're staring at the album cover as a young guy, you're like, oh, something just changed here, man. Like we are thoroughly involved. So that's the impression that he left on me, and I'm a huge fan and always will be.
You know what I want to talk about?
Hit it.
Playboy magazine,
Oh, okay.
the actual magazine, right?
Yeah.
So let me tell you a story. So I was in college and I had like one or two Playboys or something like that. And I was a freshman and it was graduation, right? So this is the Coast Guard Academy. So I'm a fourth class cadet and I'm about to become a third class cadet. And I go into, they call it the gearhead, where they put the trash cans. And there's a cardboard box in there, like a big cardboard box. And I open it up and it's full of Playboys. There's like 100 Playboy magazines in there. And I'm like, jackpot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I took them all. And what was funny was I kept them for 3 years. And when I was graduating my senior year, 3 years later, there was some freshmen that I liked, these young guys that I thought that were, they were cool kids. And I just pushed the box down the hall and I pushed it into their room. And of course, I'm a senior, so they stand at attention. And I slide this box in there. I'm like, here you go, kids.
Yeah. Christmas morning, they were like, right? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. You know, that was like my experience, I guess, like, breaking into your buddy's older brother's room and finding the stash under the bed, and that kind of thing. But they were pretty iconic. There was, I guess, during college for me when I was in college, they were super iconic, and it was, pretty common bathroom reading that was actually, once you got past the pictures and read stuff, there were some good articles and
Oh yeah.
great jokes and really good journalism in the magazine. So
Yeah.
it actually deserves a little bit more credit than just being a, TNA mag.
Yeah. I mean, they had fiction in there. They had short stories,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
There was a lot to it, like many other publications, right? Before the internet, there was actually some substance to some of the mainstream media that went around. So that was a good way of looking at it. So what let me just ask you this. What Playboy cover comes to mind? Like if you had to single out one, like what if you say, okay, picture a Playboy cover, like who's on it? Which one?
Carmen Electra.
Really? Interesting. For me, it's Pamela Anderson. The first shot that she was ever on the cover, you were like, "Wow, I get it."
Did you ever watch The Golden Child with Eddie Murphy?
Oh yeah, underrated movie to the moon.
Yeah. So do you remember the girl in that movie, Charlotte Lewis?
Yep.
She was in Playboy.
Yep. I know exactly which spread you're talking about.
Yeah.
In fact, because Golden Child. While we're on that subject,
I want the knife.
Oh my God. That and so much more. It's literally I like with my friends when we were in high school, like we made a lot of jokes about that movie. And I think it was that like it's that old, right? It goes way, way back to at least post college or something like that. But I mean, we pulled as many yucks out of that movie as we pulled out of Fletch and Caddyshack.
Yep.
It really is that good. So there is our closing advice. Watch The Golden Child with Eddie Murphy. Watch the Baz Luhrmann Elvis movie if you haven't.
I gotta watch that. I gotta
Oh man,
watch that.
dude, but give that some time. That's from the perspective of his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, right? So it's from the perspective of the antagonist of the movie, of Elvis's antagonist in his life. And so that's what makes it a really, really cool movie to me. I've watched it probably 5 times. It's blown me away. But anyway, there's our advice for the end of the podcast. We sent you off with plenty of stuff to do today. Good coverage of the markets. Like, subscribe, and treat yourself to a Macro Dirt Dual subscription because I think that we're going to have a good handle on 2025 before long. Don't you think so?
I think so. Let's see after January 20th. Everything's gonna change.
Trends are going to present themselves. There's going to be trading opportunity left and right. Macro Dirt Dual Sub. Smash the subscribe button. And hasta la vagina, everybody. That covers it.
Hasta la vagina.
Peace.